Hey, it's Jen again, teaching you some art today. Today we're going to be talking about emotional color or subjective color. And so far you've probably already gone through my lessons about regular color, which is local color, and how to mix those things. So what we're going to discuss today is about the context of color and how it represents itself in nature, how we see it in everyday life, and then how we use it in art. We talked a little bit about colors, about primary colors, secondary colors before, what's a shade, what's a tint, and we even talked about tones. We talked about complementary colors and how different colors work together or kind of against each other when they're next to one another or mixed together. But what we're going to concentrate today on is how color actually makes us feel, what it represents, and how we think about it. It's also pretty important to remember that while we're discussing color, color itself is independent of the outside world in its ability to be understood by the viewer, meaning that whatever you go through in life, whatever culture you're from, whatever experiences you have also affects how you view and process color. Not necessarily through your eye and what it looks like to your brain, but how you feel about it. So keep that in mind. The things that we're going to discuss today are going to be real generalized lessons about color. The first thing I'd like to discuss with you is warm and cool colors. Let's look at this picture here on the screen. Take a second to really appreciate it. One side as they're walking down the street feels warm, inviting, lit. It feels like you can pull off to the side, get out of the rain, and stay actually physically warm. And on the right side, you'll see that it looks rainy and cold and just kind of uninviting and something you'd want to get out of. That's the cool and warm colors of our color wheel. Those things have a very visceral or meaning from the gut kind of feeling about them because we actually get them from nature, whether we realize them or not. We do. We get most of our color theory from nature and the way that it makes us feel. Cool colors and warm colors are everywhere around us. And it's up to us as artists to interpret the message we want to send to people using those colors. Do you want people who view your artwork to feel cold? Do you want them to feel kind of sad and lonely like that rainy street? Or do you want them to feel warm and invited or even kind of hot like the left side of the street? It's up to you to understand how those things work so that when you're making a message, because that's what art really is that your message comes across correctly. Let's take a look at this next photo of a mountain range with a home on kind of a hillside there. If you look, here's a real-life example of warm and cool colors. One side of the mountain feels physically inviting. When you look at it, it feels warmer and sunnier, like you want to get out of the cold and get into that warm side of the mountain where the colors are sunny, there's yellows and oranges. And on the other side of the mountain, the areas where the sun isn't hitting, it actually feels physically colder. It looks cooler. You know that if you went there, it would be colder from your own experience. And those are cool colors showing up over there, muted colors and colors that to the untrained eye may look like gray, but there's a lot of blue in there. There's a lot of purple in there. Those colors feel cool. It's important to remember that although colors feel warm and cold, it's not necessarily that important. We often use colors to express emotion, and a lot of those emotions come from the way that we feel from our environment. So when you're in that mountain or on that mountain and you're on the warm side, you're probably feeling happy because you're in the sun, you're not cold, you don't feel crummy like that. But if you're on the other side of the mountain where it's a lot colder, unless you're somebody who loves cold, you're probably not going to be very happy, right? You're going to be cooler, you're going to be colder, you're going to be maybe even depressed that you're on the dark side of the mountain. Take a look at this example of a photograph of a desert. Doesn't it look really warm? Let's think for a second. Pause this video and think for a second and discuss, why does it look warm? I see you're back. Good. I hope you discussed it. Let's see if we come to the same conclusion about this photo. Let's examine it. The colors look warm. They don't look cold, right? Everything looks like it's been kind of sunned up by the sun. It looks like if you touch the ground, you know from your own experience, it's probably going to be pretty warm. Even if you haven't been to a desert before, you know that ground that's dry looking like this, that doesn't have moisture on it, isn't going to feel wet, so it must feel dry. And we think of dry from heat. Our colors here that we see show up in places where we find heat a lot, as the next slide is going to explain. What's up above you all the time during the day, whether it's behind clouds or not? That's right, it's the sun, and it's always there, warming the earth, making things warm, making things bright. And we associate that with high levels of energy. So during the day, we get things done. Nighttime is when we usually sleep. Because the sun is so warming, and because we get so much done during the day when it's out, we associate yellow with energy. Now, energy doesn't mean like zap, zap, crackle, like lightning, but energy of movement, of doing things, of life. So whenever we see yellow, we associate that with happy things, like being active, movement, and warm. Although yellow is a bit of a complicated color, we'll touch on that in a moment. It's important to remember that yellow is a great way to grab people's attention because it's one of the first colors that people really notice, especially when it's contrasted against something that's complementary, like a purple, or something that's very dark, like a black. Take a look at this photo of some earth. Do you see the orangey colors that are in there? The kind of orangey colors that make you feel like if you ran it between your fingers, it might actually be kind of warm earth. Orange is an in-between state between red and yellow. It's a secondary color that's formed by the mixing of the two of them, and it carries with some of the energy of both of those colors, as we'll discuss in a moment. Take a look at this slide of fire. Everybody's seen fire, and the first caveman that ever touched fire, wow, did it stick with him, and he passed it on down to everybody else about how important fire was. Thank goodness, we wouldn't be here without it. Fire also carries with it some great significance. If you look at fire, you see red, you see orange, and you see yellow. That's kind of the spectrum we think of when we think of high energy, warm colors. Literally, physically warm. If we touch fire, it's very warm, it's hot. But also, it has movement, it has potential to create things, it can bring light, but it can also burn things down and it can destroy them. So nature tends to mimic those things when we see them in animals and creatures. And we store that information when we think about color, so that when we think about something that could be dangerous, we think about orange. When we think about something that could be potentially poisonous in nature, we think of yellows and reds. So let's talk about those other colors. Not everything in the warm spectrum is dangerous, but if it's dangerous, it does stick out to us mentally first. Take a look at this slide of going from yellow to orange to red. Yellow says pay attention. Yellow equals energy or the potential to have it, which means something could happen at any moment. Orange means have caution. Just like a safety cone you see out there, there's a reason why that color is used on the road, because it's in between paying attention and danger. Orange has energy, but it also has a little bit of danger from red in it. And then there's red, which is high energy, but also a lot of danger, or passion. And it means that it could be violence or it could be something like intense love on that side, but whatever it is, there's a potential for creation or destruction with red. Take a look at this red, orange, and yellow abstract. Feel how it actually feels like fire because of the lines that are there from side to side and how it's brighter to darker. We have a room. If you walked into this room, would you feel like you should go to sleep? Or is this a room where you'd feel like you wanted to spend your day and be active? Pretty active, right? Did you know that newborn babies are not supposed to be sleeping in rooms with bright yellow walls? Because they just sleep a whole lot less, because yellow activates a part of our brain that keeps us awake. It even increases our metabolism. Next slide is a young lady laying on a couch. Look at how warm the room is. Doesn't it feel like it might be in the 80s in there? It feels very warm, past room temperature. That's because all these warm colors are being used. You don't see a lot of blues or purples or grays. You don't see anything that feels dungy or dank. It just feels warm and inviting. You don't see a lot of the color red in there, just a little bit here and there in skin tones and underplays and different things, and some of the fruit in the bowl. If we look around, it's mostly warm colors that are in the yellow and orange spectrum, which means it actually feels like there's a glow from a fire nearby. This next slide is going to be pretty important, so make sure to pay attention. Look at those two sets of hands. One of the hands has red paint, one of the hands has blue paint. If you were going to look at this right away and someone came in the room and went, "Ah!" and their hands were like the hands on the left, red, or their hands were on the ones on the right, and they did the same thing, which would you be concerned about? You would naturally think that the hands on the left might have blood on them, where the hands on the right might have paint on them. That's because we associate the color red with blood. We all have it in us, and we all know we have it in us. So below those, you can see that there is a slight wound there with some blood coming out of it, and a stop sign. There's a reason that stop signs are red. They're trying to get your attention to let you know that danger could be ahead if you do not stop. Just like orange safety cones let you know to slow down, there might be danger. Be careful. And yellow gets your attention when you're on the road. Red is there with us from the day we're born until the day we die. The placenta from a child being born is red blood. And when someone passes away, their body returns to the earth. And when they decay, red is still seen there. So it's important to remember that red is an important part of the life cycle. And because of that, it's considered an extremely powerful color all around the world and represents life and extreme power. Also a sacred color around the world because this red envelops life entirely, from birth to death. Take a look at the next slide of some different politicians from around the world. Notice how they are all wearing red. Red is considered this power color that you wear to let people know that you're in charge. Not only that, but that you have the potential for change. So red is often found in anywhere where people have political power or power in a religious organization, at least in the Western world. If you see the next slide, you'll see a traditional Indian wedding. Notice how the bride and groom are dressed in red. That's because in India, red is worn on your wedding day because it is the color of life. And your wedding is important in your life. It's the most important day in your life. Because red is so important, it also shows up in colors of passion and the way that we show love and affection towards one another. Traditionally, a red rose is given as a sign of love. And the lighter the color of flower gets in the red spectrum, the more it usually has to do with friendship and things like that. But the more the color is intense in a bright red, the more it means love and passion. Take a look at this abstract. How does it feel? How does it make you feel? Take a second to talk about it, to think about it. Pause and restart your video. Do you feel how it feels, kind of like it could be inside the human body, like it's made from something sturdy like a human body, how it has reds, lights, and dark? It feels like blood, but it also kind of feels like life, and it feels like passion. It feels like life is happening, like blood pumping through something. Something's getting done, something's happening, life is happening. Although red is a very important color and a very powerful color, let's not forget about how yellow and orange is used in nature. Let's talk about that a little bit. Check out this next slide of a hornet. Nature often uses bright colors in several different ways. Some of those ways are to attract mates, but also to scare away other potential threats, or to let other creatures know, if you eat me, I will kill you, or I will poison you. I am dangerous. Look at this hornet and how it has the potential to sting. This is actually, I believe, an African hornet. Notice the contrast on this hornet. Contrast is important in nature because it makes us pay attention to something. It sticks out in our mind first. So this hornet is telling you, hey, 1, pay attention to me, and 2, when you pay attention to me, know that I'm yellow and that I might be a threat. I have high energy. Don't cross into my area. You could get stung. Let's take a look at this beautiful monarch butterfly. Humans associate monarch butterflies with beauty and elegance and nature, but to animals, monarch butterflies can be kind of scary because they're very poisonous, actually, for their size. So monarch butterflies are displaying colors to attract mates, but also to let predators know, hey, I'm scary. Don't touch me. You're not going to like the results. The next several slides are actually of different poisonous plants. Notice how these plants are in the red spectrum. These first 2. Eating those plants can be potentially very dangerous for human beings. Moving on, we can see This little yellow frog, notice how he also has contrast just like the bee. This is a very poisonous frog, one of the most poisonous creatures in the world. Next to it is another snake, and that snake is very poisonous. Next to it again is another snake, and check out that snake. Look at how poisonous that snake is. See the orange, see the red, see the yellow on these creatures? They're letting us know, hey man, don't mess with me. I'm trouble. So the next time that you see any of these different things, it's important to remember we associate those colors with the way they make us feel. It's not so much about the creatures that we saw or the fire that we touched. It's about how it made us feel afterwards. And those things get stored in our memory, whether it's our actual memory of ourselves, whether it's our cultural memory, things that our culture talks about, or whether it's a universal kind of knowledge that you don't mess with bees because you could get stung. You don't play with fire because you can get burned. Things like that. And those colors speak volumes when we use them in art. As the last little let's talk about yellow again. This time, let's talk about it as a metallic yellow, a golden yellow. Gold colors are associated with wealth because of the mineral gold that comes from the earth and how we trade it and use it to accumulate wealth. But it's also because of that kind of associated with spiritual wealth. So things that are gold are often considered to be spiritual in paintings. So you may see a picture of a god or a goddess or a saint to have a halo of gold, or they're adorned with gold because gold infers wisdom. So remember that next time you see gold in a painting or in an artwork, it feels rich both in something you own but in something you have in your mind. All right, now that we talked about warm colors, let's start talking about some of the cool colors in the cool spectrum, which is blue, teal, green, and kind of a purplish violet color. Not necessarily in that order. I tend to put violet purple off into its own little world, and we'll discuss why in a moment. Blue is the lowest energy, and when I mean lowest energy, I mean the way it feels to us. It could be sad or it could be calm. It could be relaxing or it could be just depressing. It could be about heaven and gods, or it can just be about earth, like water and sky. Next, we have teal, which is a middle energy. It feels very relaxing, the middle ground. Human beings like things in the middle, believe it or not. It means your needs are being met in nature of water and plants. It is about heaven, could still be heavenly, or gods, could be about God or gods. And then we have green, which is a higher energy color. It's starting to get a little more almost towards the warm side. And it makes us think of healthy, that our needs are being met in nature, that it is earthly, kind of mother nature-y, and we feel nourished and healthy when we see a bright green. Look at this slide of a man sitting underneath a tree in a field. Feel how the field around him feels warm when you look at it? That's because those greens that are there are much brighter, right? And when he's in the shade there, it feels much cooler. Notice how in the shade his shirt is almost a purple blue in different areas. Okay, and it's more of that blue spectrum. That's because cool colors feel physically cooler, like we talked about at the very beginning of this discussion. It makes us feel cold or cool. So that's because we physically feel different when we're out of direct heat or sunlight. And we associate those things with feeling warm or cold, depending on where we're at. This next slide of a very cold Arctic area is beautiful, but also, wow, look at those colors. They're very cool colors. We have deep blues and deep teals. We have grays and light blues and light teals. We don't really see green in there because green is approaching healthy new plants. And in the Arctic, we don't see plants. We only see ice. We see cool and we see water. Look at this abstract that someone made, and this was literally called Cold Abstract. Doesn't it feel cold? Doesn't it feel like a world of icicles, or maybe like a forest you're walking into where everything's iced over in the Arctic? Did you notice how the colors are so similar to the real world? But you can't actually pick a thing out, right? You don't see an actual thing, but it gives you the feeling of being there. That's because the artist used just the right colors and just the right shapes to make us feel like we're in an alien cold world. See the man in the scarf? He is not happy, right? Well, when you're not happy, that is something that you relate back to what happened to you. So whatever makes you not happy, you remember it. And generally speaking, when people are really cold, they are not happy. So we associate things that are cool with also sad colors. So a blue could be sad, as we talked about before. Take a look at this painting someone made of a beautiful meadow. Notice how one side of the meadow is very warm, but if you start to walk towards us, towards the bottom, ooh, it gets real cold, kind of, doesn't it? It makes you feel like it might be the end of spring on a cool day. And that's because those colors are actually physically cool. We see them show up in shades in real life, but when we use them in an abstract way or in a way to express ourselves in life, if we painted all our walls in our house a cool blue or a cool purple, it will feel relaxing. If we use a lot of gray in those colors, it could feel sad. Check out this rainy day. Isn't it beautiful? See how the fresh green grass and foliage on the bottom looks nurtured, looks healthy, but up above it, it looks like cold and that something refreshing is going to come and dump water on the earth, right? So it can also mean refreshing, and we'll talk about that in a second. Besides refreshing, dark blues can also signify depression or sadness or sogginess or loneliness. Aloneness is a good word for it. Also tell us that someone is feeling kind of slightly angry and sad. Take a look of this rendering that someone made of the god Thor. You can see he's holding lightning in his hand, which has a little bit of that green to it, of teal, which feels kind of a little energetic, just like a lightning bolt would be, but it's in the sky. And then he's surrounded by these clouds that some of them are lighter colors and some of them are dark colors. So it means that he is feeling very emotional. It's also important to realize that this person could have chosen any colors they wanted, but because the god Thor in mythology lived in the sky, he needed or she needed to make sure that they used colors that represent the sky, but also it's important to represent the god's attitude. Thor was a very changeable god in mythology. Painting from Picasso's Blue period. He was really sad during this period, and he had a lot of troubles with his mental health and feeling really depressed. And because of that, during this period, he painted nothing but blue paintings, many blue paintings. And it's a pretty famous period and a good example of how blue in the right context can really convey sadness. Do you see this figure on this next slide? Doesn't it look kind of like a person? It isn't necessarily a person, but whoever made it made something that makes our brain think of a person because of the shapes. And we see the colors there and it feels alone. See how the person's hovering with all touching it? That's because the artist did that to make it feel lonely. And the blue colors also help back that up. Slide after that of the man smoking in a room feels depressing, feels sad, doesn't feel warm and refreshing or godly. It just feels sad because of the cool colors that are used in there, how they're washed out. Take a look on the opposite end of the spectrum of blues, blues that are happy, blues that are bright, blues that don't feel dull or depressing. Take a look at this slide of a beautiful lake next to some green, lush forest. Looks inviting, doesn't it? That's because we have some bright blues. They're not dingy, they're not dirty, they don't feel sad. The slide after that is a Caribbean area, and notice how beautiful the water looks there. You can see down clearly. Teal is something where we associate being able to see a little bit of land, the green of nature, plus water, the blue of nature. That's exactly what's happening in those waters, is it's reflecting a little bit of the earth that's there, which is the algae and different types of plants, mixed with the blue that's reflecting from the sky and the water, and you get teal, beautiful teal Caribbean. But it also does something else. It makes us feel refreshed. That water doesn't feel dingy, it doesn't feel dirty. And if we go to the next slide here, we can see a bunch of kids playing in a creek. Now, when it's hot out, we go into water to feel cooler. Animals do it and people do it. And if you see here, it's a good example of how that happens and water cools us down. The next slide is also going to show somebody drinking water. Water cools us down physically. So when we think of cool colors that are associated with water, we think of physically cooling down. That's an important part of cool colors. And some of the reason why they're actually called cool because it feels physically cooler, not just mentally. Next at that blue sky. Look at how beautiful that is. But it also makes us think of what's above us. Heaven, spirituality, something greater than ourselves. Who knows what it could be, right? Religious art, in the West especially, blue is a signifier of royalty from heaven. Think of it that way. Those who have been chosen to lead those who come from up above. So blue is often passed down in royal lineage colors in kings and queens of Europe, and that was an important color to them. That's why it's called royal blue. See the color that Mary is wearing in this painting? It's a bright royal blue. And those were reserved for people who were special, who were ordained to be spokespersons for God. See that picture showing up in this iconography, different painting here, with this beautiful kind of halo around the Virgin Mother Mary and this blue color that she's wearing. But it doesn't just show up in Western art and Western religion. Let's take a look at this beautiful sky. And look at how beautiful it is, almost like a pattern that rotates. Take a look at this Islamic art here of a beautiful geometrical design that's often found in mosques around the world. This beautiful geometric design reminds us of like a rotating sky up above us, and a pattern that is almost indistinguishable for a human being to pick out, but it's extremely complex, just like a plan that God would implement. These different designs are really important in religion, but it's the colors that speak volumes. All around the world in different religions, blue is used as a signifier of what's up above, because blue is the sky, but it's also the water. And ancient peoples used blue whenever available to signify something that was heavenly or important or nurturing. Slide on over to this lake where we see so much of this teal kind of coming through there. Now, teal's an important color because it does two things. It meets the land and the sea. Whenever you have a teal, you have some kind of plant growth and some kind of water that's reflecting the sky up above. So you have air, you have water, and you have foliage. Basically everything you need to live. You don't need animals to live, you just need those things. So that means if you are surrounded by teal, then you are surrounded by comfort and relaxation, and you can stop worrying about things for a bit. Take a look at this picture of a spa treatment facility. Notice how the light is all teal color. That's because it's a relaxing color and it makes you feel just like chilling out. Remember next time you think about blues and when you use them in your artwork, am I using a bright blue? Am I using a teal? Am I using kind of a greenish color? Am I going to be using a combination of all these? Are they going to be brighter? Are they going to be darker? And what message is my color sending to the person who's looking at my art? Next up on discussion is green. Green is a very interesting creature in the art world. Green usually signifies nature, and it also tells us about health. We get this information from our relationship with nature. Take a look at these corn stalks up above, or wheat stalks, whichever they are. I don't remember. The one on the right looks healthy. It's full of different colors of green, light greens, spring greens. The color on the left, though, those stalks, they don't look so healthy. Notice how they're starting to rot, how their colors are starting to turn, and how rot reminds us of the earth, things that return to the earth, which can be very helpful and good, but in this context, when it's found on green, not a good indicator that this plant is healthy and that we probably don't want to eat it. On the other hand, look at this bright, fresh, spring green looking bell pepper. Doesn't it look inviting? It looks healthy. It looks like it's something you can bite into that's not going to harm you, that won't make you sick because it's not sick. Two bell peppers, though, you can see the colors have changed on them. One is a very dark green, which means it's starting to turn. Look at that very, very dark green towards the bottom, which is rot. The next one you can see is kind of an olivey green with some brownish colors to it. This bell pepper has started to turn. So we know that when colors in the green spectrum go from a bright spring green to kind of a dingy green, that it changes how we feel about green. It feels nurturing, and then suddenly it feels sickly or negative. Check out this basket of greens. All these different green vegetables feel healthy because none of them are thwarted by anything that looks like rot. Think about what we just talked about with the color green, and then think of this painting of Mother Nature. Doesn't she look joyful? Doesn't she look full of energy? Doesn't she look full of nurturing? Look at all the bright green colors that you find in her. She feels healthy, and she feels like she wants to provide health. Take a look at this portrait of Vincent Van Gogh he made towards the end of his life when he was dealing with a lot of health problems. Notice how his skin has dashes of an olive green skin tone to it. Notice how the shadow is an olive green. Notice how he feels sickly and unhappy in this portrait he made. He used these colors to represent sadness, sickness, unwellness. Check out this next painting, which I believe is entitled The Envious Woman. Notice how her skin looks almost greenish. Not a green like you'd think of when you think of green, but notice how it has a green tone to it. That's because the artist wanted to show that she, in her emotions, feels real negative. She feels jealousy. She feels rot. Because doesn't jealousy just make you feel like rotten? You feel rotten on the inside. And she feels rotten. So that color choice helped provide information about how she's feeling. In your artwork, next time you think about using green, think of the different things we discussed. Now would be a really good time to talk about all the blue colors, what they mean, and your greens. Take some time to pause this video and discuss. Can you think of things that are green? Can you think of examples of healthy things that are green? Can you think of things that don't make you feel good that are green? Can you think of ways that you can use green in your artwork to express yourself? Pause this video and discuss. Now that you've paused your video and discussed green, it's time to talk about purple, the eccentric child of the color spectrum. Purple or violet is a rare and unique, eclectic, and spiritual color. It was often used by royalty because it's a really hard color to find in nature. It's actually pretty rare. We think of it as an everyday color now because of photography and Photoshop and new chemical pigments that have been made. But back in the day, royal was a very hard color to come across, royal purple. And violet was even more difficult because it just isn't found in nature too often. Because of this, it was considered a very special color, and only very special people could wear the color purple. Purple is muted. It can feel sad, it can feel depressed, it can feel dark, but when it's bright, it can feel mysterious and unique, it can feel kind of artistic, and it definitely feels very feminine. These beautiful violets striking through the green, we see them, they stick out to us because next to a green, they're really bright, they're contrasting. Green and purple are opposites on the color wheel, which means they're complementary colors. Just like you would compliment someone and shake their hand and tell them something nice about themselves, complementary colors make each other feel better by being next to each other, make each other look better by being next to each other. They complement one another. Check out this beautiful little birdie. Isn't he cute? I just want to give him a snuggle. Take a look at those beautiful colors on him. He goes from kind of a tealish color all the way to this purple violet, which is very rare. In nature, he's saying, look at me, pay attention to me. I'm not dangerous, but I am beautiful. Aren't I the best? Pay attention to me. Moving on, look at this unique fungus. Isn't it just beautiful? It's growing in the forest of green and it's sticking out purple. Because of its unique color, it does stick out like a sore thumb. And maybe it wants to be spread across the forest by predators, things that would pick it up and move chunks of it so that it can spread. Look at this amethyst that comes from the earth. You'd have to actually go find this. Break open a rock to find this treasure on the inside. Isn't it beautiful? And look at this purpley, beautiful violet color. Things feel unique and rare in nature because of just not seeing them very often or having to hunt for them. And anything we have to work hard for feels extra special once we have it. This beautiful artwork abstract is actually not a picture of amethyst, although the person painted this in a way to make us think of amethyst with these different kind of crunchy looking abstract pieces everywhere. It feels like treasure, doesn't it? It feels unique. Here's a painting of some beautiful flowers. Don't they feel calming? Don't they feel kind of feminine and relaxing? These aren't bright and strong. And although purple can be a masculine color, because gender isn't necessarily about your sex, it is about how you feel, purple is often thought of as a feminine color. So it's used in environments where people want to feel relaxed and nurtured also. Next slide, we see the artist Prince, or the artist formerly known as Prince, depending on what time frame you're listening to his music. He was always a fan of the color purple. And interestingly enough, he calls himself Prince, or called himself Prince, which is royalty. And he always wore this royal color purple. He's a very artistic and eclectic individual who was also very spiritual and quiet about his spirituality. Did he choose this color because it signified those things? Or did he choose this color because it was his favorite color and he just happened to be those things? Either way, he's a good definition of why the color purple feels like it does. It's time to discuss the color purple. Pause this video and talk about the color purple. Ask yourself the following questions. What are some things in nature that are purple? When you see purple, do you stop and look? What's your favorite color purple? How could you use purple in your artwork to send a message about something? Light purples and dark purples and light violets and dark violets feel differently and convey different messages. Pause and take some time to discuss this. Welcome back. I hope you had fun talking about the color purple. Right now we're going to talk about brown, black, gray, and white. Brown is an earth tone. It's a very important color, and it's made from the three primary colors of yellow, blue, and red. There's other ways to make brown, but that's the easiest way when you're first beginning. Brown is the color of earth, of nature, of soil, and we think of it as resilient, of cyclic, just like things in earth break down, fall into the soil, and then are reborn again in plants and growth. So cyclic is related to brown. It's also related to being warm and dry, but brown can also be a lonely color. It's a color related to hard working because the soil is always working hard to provide things for us. Next up is black. Black is a very important color. It's mysterious, it's powerful, it represents death, night, and the unknown. It can also be sleek, modern, technological, cosmopolitan or of the city, and very sophisticated. It can also relate to things in the afterlife. Gray is all about neutrality and balance. It can be linked to depression when used in certain contexts, and grayed colors and muted colors feel subtle or fall to the background. But gray is terrific at balancing, and it's often used in technology and anywhere where subtlety and quietness and neutrality are important. Especially in the office, you'll see a lot of gray everywhere, so that the focus is on the work. And last but not least is white. White is actually the absence of color, and it feels clean, new, pure, and sterile. It represents new beginnings. It can be modern, simple, fresh, and a clean slate. It can represent heaven and gods, but also, white can also be pretty boring. It's important to note that black and white represent opposite ends of the spectrum, but they need each other to be born. And what I mean by that is one doesn't exist without the other. We need black and white together to work together to make all the other colors beautiful along with them. Black and white are one of the most contrasting set of colors, meaning that they're very complementary to one another when they work together. Next, take a look at this slide of the earth. You can see how the earth tones of brown are found everywhere on the bottom half of this slide. Up above, we have blue skies. Down below, we have cracked brown earth. And although that earth is currently dry and cracked and not growing anything, it has the potential to do so if it was given water. See these plants growing in soil? Notice how as it goes down, the soil gets darker and the soil at the top is more brown. So brown is the beginning of the soil cycle. It makes us think of earth. It makes us think of something sprouting out of the ground. Without brown, there could not be a lot of green. Take a look at these beautiful desert formations. Notice how they jut out of the ground, looking really gorgeous. These interesting kind of abstract shapes that nature provided us, and these beautiful earth tones, warm and inviting. The desert can be beautiful. Although it seems monochrome, meaning one color, it is actually, in fact, many different types of colors. But its overall color and texture makes us think of earth and close to the earth. Take a look at this abstract watercolor, or maybe alcohol ink, kind of hard to tell. Notice the beautiful colors here in the earth tones. How even though it's an abstract and it's not a thing that's representing anything in particular, because of our background knowledge about earth tones, it makes it feel like something earthy. It makes it feel like a beautiful puddle that's just been stomped on with clay and colors splashing everywhere. How this next abstract feels like a landscape. Is it a landscape? It really isn't. There is no representation of actual landscape here. But what it is our impression of one because of our background knowledge on what the earth actually looks like. This artist did a really good job of using earth tones to represent something that isn't actually there and make us feel a certain way, close to the earth. Next, we're going to discuss black. Take a look at the night sky sometime. Doesn't it make you feel wondrous? It makes you wonder what's out there. What do we not know about the universe and space and God and time and travel and all the good things we just don't know anything about? That's the color black. How about this photograph of a dark forest at night? Look deep into that forest. Do you feel like going into it? I kind of do and I kind of don't. What about you? Would you go into this forest? I might not. One thing's for sure, it's nice and dark and black deep into the forest. That gives us a sense of mystery, of fear, of the unknown. We don't know what's out there. It's not necessarily awe-inspiring like space is and up above us at night, but this is fearful, what could be out there to get me? Hey, look at all these nice black cars. Aren't they beautiful? That's because black is a color of sophistication. So when they roll out new vehicles, they usually make them in black too and show them off on commercials because it looks sleek, it shows off the lines beautifully, and it feels elegant. Look at this lovely lady wearing a little black dress. Every woman in North America knows that you should have a little black dress in your closet because it's sophisticated and it goes with everything. Here is Anubis, the Egyptian god of the underworld. The jackal-head god who made sure that you got in if you were supposed to. Notice how he is black. All throughout his body, he's this dark, beautiful black color to represent the afterlife and things that happen in the unknown. Our last slide in the black area is a black and white abstract. Remember how we talked about how contrasty they are? They make each other stick out, black and white. Look at how great the black looks next to the white and vice versa. In art, we can call this positive and negative space. It means something looks like a thing because of another thing. Take some time to talk about the color black and what it means in our artwork, what it means in messages we send, and how we can use it every day to communicate different things. Up next and last is the color white. White is a color that we associate with pristine things, things that are sterile, things that are clean, things that are new. Take a look at this wedding couple here, this beautiful couple getting married on their favorite day of their life. And notice that they chose to wear white, both of them. White represents a new beginning, it represents purity of love, and it represents the start of their new life together. Remember when we talked about the color red? Those same things are important to people all over the world, but we use color differently to express those things. So in India, red is the color of love is the color of new beginnings, is the color of life. Here in North America, we usually think of it as white. Next, we see a Muslim leader wearing an all-white garb. Notice that the gear on top of his head is all white as well. And this is part of the religion that allows people to know that their leader is pure and godly. Next up, we see some priests from the Catholic Church. They're wearing their garb exactly the same way that the Muslim leader is, in representation of godliness, cleanliness, purity, and sanctity. Same reasons that babies are christened is the same reasons that they wear white in North America, because of a new beginning and a clean slate. Check out this beautiful hotel room. Look at how pristine it looks. It certainly looks clean. White is a good color to use if you're trying to decorate because it lets you know if something's getting dirty very quickly. And the absence of dirt makes things feel safe and sterile and comfortable, a place that you can relax in. It also has a feeling of sophistication and elegance and simplicity. Simple things can be very elegant things because they're uncomplicated. Just like this white kitchen, where it has granite countertops and white cabinets, this is now a very modern look of sophistication to have a mostly all white interior. Take a look at this last piece of art before we finish our presentation. Now this art has a lot of texture in it, but notice that it's all white, and the white does all the talking for color. You don't need any other colors in this. Because of the texture, shadows, lights, and darks show up all because of how it's three-dimensional, and white provides the background for this to happen on. Because of this, that's why paper is white. It's a clean slate to start out on that you can create anything else on. Now that you've taken some time to look at color, to understand color a little bit more, go through the information about cultural color with your class. Discuss, give examples, and search the internet for examples of these different things across the world and how different cultures use color. Ask yourself the question, what would red look like to somebody who lives in the desert? What would they think of when they saw red versus green? Ask yourself questions like, is purple important in the rainforest? What does it mean to them? Do research and find out. Ask questions about color. The more you know, the more you can grow your message and your art. After you've completed your color lesson, you'll be ready for your first abstract painting class.